Hey guys, look at that. No intro, right to the message with Ryan.
What's up, YouTube?
Here in the studio, never been here in our studio to do a live stream.
No, this is a brand new thing for me. The comments over here are like this big. I can actually read them instead of Randy reading them off. You guys are gonna mess me up for sure. I don't know. Big day.
It is a big day. It is a big day, and you know we got a lot of people out here. All the usuals, you see them flying by here. So I'm happy you can read the comments. Maybe it'll throw you off a little bit.
You're definitely gonna throw me off. I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to read them. I don't know. I don't know. Ryan, who?
There's
there
the
we
camera
go.
right there, buddy.
There
There's
we
the
go.
camera. Anyway, guys, we do have Ryan here, and there are rumors flying everywhere for the last few weeks.
Largely true.
Yes, yes, most of them true. So the huge news is we've merged.
Yes. I don't think anybody will see that. Like, it's almost like watching two people date for a decade and then being surprised they get married. I don't know. You know, like our companies have worked really tightly together for a long time.
Absolutely, and I think for quite a while, for whatever inside rumors people had or just instinct, the rumors combined with how many people know that we've worked together pretty tightly. Especially, you mentioned me in the in the live streams all the time. I mentioned you in the live streams, so I think they really could put things together. So it's probably not a huge surprise for a lot of the audience out there, a lot of our control freaks, so to speak.
We're all welcome to come to the wedding.
Yeah. So one of the things Ryan and I have been kind of trying to figure out how we want to have this live stream and talk to you guys. And one of the things we talked about is maybe giving peel back the curtain a little bit on the like the history of Terrence and Ryan as Bulk Reef Supply and Neptune Systems and how we've kind of worked together and whatnot.
Yeah, so I say this a lot, but like the best way to predict the future is to look at history, right? And you can usually plot it out. So I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you guys don't know about. A bunch of it you'll hear about today. But starting with the first question of like, really, what do you expect, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Jake Adams asked me that earlier today.
Oh, you had a call with Jake?
Yes. You know what? And so I thought about it over lunch, and I'm like, well, how do you sum this up like in a sentence or so? And so other than I had the call with him too, I talked to him for a while. I summed it up this way. If I had to sum it up in a sentence, what can you expect from the merger of BRS and Neptune? It would be innovations and new solutions are about to come faster than ever.
Yep.
Right? And I think if you look at history, you're probably going to believe that pretty quickly. But then I actually shared between you and I believe that two companies full of passionate reefers and expanded resources will result in lots of good things for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely, and it should come to no surprise with, like I said, all the discussions we've had and the discussions or the mentions that we have between each other that we've talked quite a bit over the years. I think our first meeting was, in Dallas in Macna or something like that.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, when I first met you.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I think we'll give you like a little bit of insight to see how things have evolved and like where some of these things have come out of. And you can start to see how this is going to build toward the future, and like new exciting things are sure to come.
Absolutely, a lot more resources, a lot more capabilities are coming with the two companies coming together and seeing how some of the stuff in the past has come about. Now we can bring even more faster.
So just for you guys, I look for people in my life that are willing to tell me no. In fact, like Ryan, that is just stupid. Terrence is one of those people.
I have told you no quite a few times.
Yeah, or even like
it's not possible, or it's not, we can't do that, or what have you.
And then like, I have questions like, well, what if there's infinite resources, man? The hammer's infinitely big. What then?
Right.
And so for those of you who don't know, my wife actually really likes Terrence a lot, but hates it when I talk to him because I talk to him for 3 hours.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier too to Ryan, I think I speak more to Ryan over the past few years in these calls that we have than when I was dating my wife Nancy. We had these long conversations about.
That's an embarrassing fact.
Yes, I know it's super embarrassing, but it's how passionate we are about reef keeping. Right?
Jeremy is also one. So I have more than one wife.
Oh,
I
no.
guess. Yeah, so she's
You're not my
poor
only
her.
one.
And the reason, though, for that is because there are so few people for me to really, sharpen the steel on. Because to really do great things, you have to talk to people that own tanks. because I was just talking about it with Randy the other day. Every great thing that we've ever learned or shared has come out of one of the tanks that we've set up, or one of the Investigate series that we've done, and how we understand how it all comes together at the end.
Right, absolutely.
And so, like, if we were not doing that, it just wouldn't materialize. We'd know the same world we knew when we tried a reef tank 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's part of the authenticity that you have to bring when you're trying to solve problems for people. When here at Neptune Systems, when we're trying to come up with how we're going to give the next products, we're always looking at, well, what's the real problem we're trying to solve here? And if you're not using the products, and if you're not having those challenges and those difficulties, you're really not going to hit it right on the mark for the customers.
And so for me, I need to talk to somebody. When I got an idea, I'm like, what if we did this? I obviously have to talk to somebody who has a reef tank, and we all know you, right?
Yeah.
Also, Jeremy for me, who has been like a lifelong reefer, all the way even to his father, man. Like there's 30 years of this in there. Like not only knows like what it's like, the technology behind it, but what it like feels like to be in that position of this happened or didn't happen.
Or loss. Like the loss thing is a huge one, right? And when you have this thing you've invested so much time and energy and effort into, and you have, it might not be a catastrophe, but even mini losses on corals, and what if I was able to do this, and all of those things building together, and then being able to have those conversations with somebody else that's on the same level.
Well, so Jeremy actually shared with me. He didn't even want to share this, and I forced him to share it live because it was so powerful. But he went on a live with me. And he shared, you know, what happened when he had to sell his tank to move up to San Francisco or the Bay Area. And like he had these corals, specifically in F-flow, man, they like were giant, and it just like broke his heart to the point that he couldn't think about the next tank. And it was like really painful to talk about. And I'm like, you don't know that unless you've been there.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. All right, so I thought we'd share some stuff here, just kind of how things have gone. And I will start at maybe one of the beginnings.
Okay.
I'd never met these guys, and at the time I was a big Reef Keeper fan. I liked this like super simple thing.
I had one too. I had a Reef Keeper too. That was my first one. Just didn't know if you know that or not.
I didn't know that actually. I had a guy like come to my house. I had a Reef Club meeting at my house, and he came over and he did like a demo for all of the people that are at my house. And I was just a reefer at the time, just having people in my house. And I'm like, wow, oh, I understand it now. I didn't get it before. You know? Put it on the tank, did exactly what I thought it would do, and boom. And then I saw the Neptune, and I'm like, I don't get this. Actually, I had another friend who had it, and he had like the original, and had like a line limit of code. He had like 8 tanks on this thing.
So aqua controller, so like one of these guys, or
one.
Yeah, I think we got one down here. You've probably seen this one, right?
But he was nerding out on the thing all
That's
the way.
the original aqua controller right there.
Yeah.
OG.
I like, but wait, he talked about it, I was like, oh, this is not for me.
Right.
Yeah, no way. But I met you and Kurt at a Magna, and like you guys started talking about it, and I was like, oh, all right, I'm starting to understand.
That was my first Magna, by the way.
Oh, that was your
as an employee.
Oh, cool. Then I went and talked to Randy too later on, and like Randy explained it because he's like a super fan,
right?
You know, super user,
control freak. Yeah.
And then I'm like, wow, you know the piece that's missing from this whole thing is, like everything else, it's just the information. Like, how do I use it? Why is it of value? What would it do if I had one, right?
Right.
And so we did the 20-part series on how to set
things awesome. Up. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So I think that was like probably the first instance of what it looks like when Neptune and BRS would work together, which is there is a problem in the universe, which is I'm not really sure how to use this thing. Let's fix it.
Yeah, so the complexity came forward, and the realization for us came forward fairly quickly that not everybody wanted to go in and do programming and write programming. And Ryan in these phone calls is like, dude, we can't be doing programming. How can you make it simpler? How can you make it simpler? And that's when we came up with the tasks and decided to have a step-by-step way that you could walk through these things and get them set up.
The joke's on me now, actually, because I actually like the if-then code now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, there's actually some things where I'm like, oh, you know what? Once you understand, like, this is actually like cool too.
So that was one of those things for sure.
Yeah, like like you started like, you know what? Hey, when we work together on something, a really cool result comes out the other side, right? You know what? And I'm just going to bounce around here because we just took some ideas down. Trident 2. Somebody called
so
me
you
about
really are
Trident
bouncing,
2. Yeah,
bouncing
we're going
around.
back and forth.
Now you're on, now you're in an area where it's the users are just been like, dude, when are we going to have a Trident 2? When are we going to be able to do phosphate and nitrate? And I have been giving them. They probably think it's like a nonsense line, but you know how I am. I think as we do in these conversations, like, okay, who's going to buy this thing? Why are they going to buy it? What are they going to see? What value are they going to get out of it? How much are they going to be willing to pay? And I kept coming down to the fact, like, wow, the amount of R&D that we'd have to put in to do this. We've done some investigations on it, obviously already, and I can't say where we are in the process, but certainly this situation makes things like that way more possible.
Way easier because it's not as big of a home run economically as calcium and alkalinity, right?
Right.
But here's the thing. Actually, the phone call went like this. Ryan, imagine a Trident that does phosphate and nitrate. What would number 3 be?
Yeah, what would be the third thing?
3-hour debate.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, but for me, a lot of people, like, there's an evolution of knowledge and how we approach all of our tanks. And so, the reason I think that people don't pay attention to nitrate, for instance, is because testing is a giant pain in the butt.
Right.
Right? Like, that's why I do that one way less than others.
Right.
And I'm actually okay with, I'll take a fast reading over a perfect reading in some cases. But what that really gives you, especially phosphate and nitrate together, is it tells you the quality of your filtration approach and your food input. Because it really, you can
You think it varies a lot through the week?
No,
dramatically?
It varies when I'm lazy. It varies when I'm dumping in too much food. It varies when I switch it from frozen food to dry food. It varies when I start adding new things to the tank. And so what is missed is usually it'll tell you that your levels are too high when stuff starts dying. There is a point before that. And so you might say, well, I don't know, my nitrate's fine at 2, it might be 10, it might be 20, it might be whatever your goal is fine. But what isn't good is perpetually rising.
Right.
Because perpetually rising leads to nowhere good. And how would I know that if I don't test? And so what I would start to find out is kind of a daily pulse as to if this thing tested nitrate for me every day, it would start to tell me that either I'm feeding too much for my filtration, or maybe one piece of my filtration isn't working as good as it was before.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, there's no doubt. This is the interesting debates that we have.
Yeah. Sure. Well, now I can start to piece together why I might want one of these things. Not everybody will want it the same way as alkalinity.
Right.
But without that, there is no real pulse on to, why or how would I know whether or not my nutrient input and my nutrient export is working the way I'd like, and either trending to 0, or trending to 1,000. Right. Neither one of those is good. And I don't want to wait until everything's dead or starting to die for me to find out.
Right. I am liking that new HANA checker, though. The new HANA checkers.
Okay, I only tried the ultra low one.
No. The other one's a joke, and I've said so on our program here. The ultra low one, forget about it, right? The new one, the high range.
Okay, you know what's funny, actually? Is the first one Randy and I used it, and I'm like, I don't know, this is for somebody, but it ain't for me.
Exactly.
Threw it away.
Yes.
In my house, I would never go through this level.
The new
of
one
effort,
works just like the phosphate. It's one powder. You put it in, and you get a number, and it works.
Okay, I was so turned off on the first one. That's so funny.
I know.
I just learned.
Anyway.
All right. All right. This is I'm gonna skip all the way to an obvious one.
Okay.
Elmo.
Okay. What is Elmo? We got to let people know first what it is. So we have, obviously, the Apex is our top of the line product, right, that we have. And then we have an entry level product called the EL. And so Ryan and I, this was a lot of conversations over this one, said, well, I don't want all of that stuff, right? I just want to be able to monitor. And so the Elmo was born out of that, and it's the Apex EL monitor only. And that was kind of an internal, descriptor of this, that Ryan's like, I just want to know when stuff goes wrong in my tank. And I don't want people to have to spend a ton of money to know when stuff goes wrong in the tank. And so we conceived this together and said, okay, we're going to do a test market. and see if this works and it can be viable. Because my biggest concern, obviously, when I was on the phone with him, is we have viable products at the $500 level. We have viable products at the $800 level. A little bit worried about bringing a $250 or $300 product into the mix, right, and mess with that whole equilibrium.
I didn't care. And so for me, my only goal is people's success, right? And so this is the way that I look at it is like, there's been a foundational change in reefing over the last 20 years, right? If you look back at the reefers that were successful for a decade in the past, they all looked pretty much the same. I pay a tremendous amount of attention to my tank. I would notice when anything is looking bad. I would know immediately when my return pump broke because I look at the tank 5 times a day. Right? All right. Totally understandable why that level of attention would achieve a result. Right. Well, what if I don't have that amount of time? Is reefing just not for me, or is there a different solution? You know? Okay, and so then we actually went all the way to the other end, which is, all right, let's do a controller. Now this thing will automate and do redundancy. The temperature goes off, it'll turn on a fan. If the fan doesn't work, it will turn off my lights. If the lights don't work, it'll turn on a chiller, blah, 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 like all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's great, man, I understand that whole thing. But you know what? Like I really like to think about the 80-20 of everything. That concept has really drilled into my soul. Like 80% of the results can be produced with 20% of the effort in almost every case. Okay. What if instead of all the redundancy stuff that I had to code into the Apex at the time, and tax weren't available at the time, what if the thing just told me the temp was going up and my phone blew up and said, Ryan, go look at it?
Right.
Ah.
How many more people could take? How many more people could take advantage of that? That was the discussion we had. How many more people could take advantage of that, be more successful, avoid so many catastrophes, not have a barrier to entry that was there? How many more of them might be there?
Yes, and like the reality is like, what if you can make that for Reef Keeper 2 type money? Like this is like $250, $300 or something, and not $800. Right. And like, yeah, $300 still isn't cheap, but in comparison to the coral that went in it that you're trying to save, it's nothing.
And the interesting part is back against him, I was like, well, why wouldn't they just buy the EL? It's only $500 and you get all this other value with it. And you're like,
dude, $200.
Yeah. It's just like they don't want to spend an incremental more, $100 more, $150, $200.
There's also the piece of the Elmo has all these sensors on it that tells you when all this stuff broke, and the only thing you really need to do is put your name and your phone number in it and turn it on. You're done. Right? Like.
And for those that don't know, we did basically some float switches that we had custom made by a third party and kind of packaged the whole thing together. We pre-programmed everything on it so that once they plugged it in, all of these sensors, everything already had all of their alerts set up and ready to go, so it was going. And for us, it was the ability to look and see, well, what will they do? What will these customers do? Are they going to sit with this product and just use only this, or are they going to go out and get a taste of more of the Apex ecosystem? And you were right.
Okay. So like this is again, I always love being right. This is again like where, steel sharpening steel, right? Because right away after they sold a bunch of them, but like still no Elmo. Chirp, chirp. Right. Like to you guys, I know this thing is going now, but I'm not allowed to say it, right? But at some point this is materialized. But even behind the scenes, I'm like, all right, so you know what? Like they're spending lots of money on different things. So I literally called up Kurt one day and I'm like, Kurt, I will submit $1 million PO for these. Like I'll pay for it up front. And
this is about as honest discussion as you're going to get, guys, because that is for real. That is 100% for real.
I'll pay for it up front, and if $1 million isn't the one, you tell me the number, because this thing needs to exist in the universe. It will help people that need that help, man, to get over that hump. And eventually they'll probably add some outlets and stuff to it too anyway. But these people need to know when the return pump broke. They need to know when the heater broke, when their furnace broke, when the air conditioner broke, when the thing is leaking and it's destroying my floors, when the skimmer's going insane. Like if you just told me, man, I'd fix it. I'll go home, and fix it. I'll wake up and fix it. Right. But the reality is the vast majority of the day, I am not sitting in front of the tank. Right. I'm sleeping, or I'm at work, or I'm playing with my kids. it's about a half hour every day of my attention it gets.
And from a practical perspective from us, from Neptune Systems as a company, right, there really is a finite level of resources. I try to tell people all the time, we're not a giant company, we're not Apple, right? We have to pick and choose those products very carefully that are going to have the biggest impact for the customers, have the biggest impact for being able to continue really great research and development, to have the right number of sales numbers, all of those things. And so my excitement, along with this history, the going forward excitement is we're gonna be able to do more of that.
Actually, we're gonna keep it raw here. All right.
Uh-oh.
So I talked to Kurt last week, and pretty much everybody that knows Terrence knows you're an aggressive dude, man. Right? But here's the thing, man. You guys don't know this. You really don't. But I got two things, man. Kurt told me, you don't know what it's like to have Terrence fighting for you. Right? And you know what I immediately thought of? I don't know if you saw this or not, but there was a gentleman that sent me a little pocket knife a couple weeks ago, and it says on there, Ryan fights for the users, right? I'm like, good. Man, you made like my month, right? Like, because it's just like we do so much, but you never know how it's all conveyed, right? You guys don't know. But 3 hours every Saturday and Sunday when I'm talking to you, the whole thing is fighting for the users, because it's fighting to get stuff that like wouldn't be made. Stuff that will help people be more successful. That if only this thing existed, we would do better. Right,
and yeah, again, more transparency. The two of us would have conversations that many other people probably wouldn't want to know that we're having, right, on these inside conversations, just so that we can get to give reef keepers what they want to have, right, and get to the end solution that we want, and give some inside information sometimes the companies don't do.
Okay, so there's a reason why it's you and why I've talked to Jeremy, because I talked to Jeremy, it's the same thing. It's like, dude, there's so many coral dips, dude, but like which one works on softies? Which one works on Euphilia? Which one works as the best for acros? Because they're not all the same. Which one, the hydrogen peroxide will kill all of the algae on your frag, but what corals are affected by hydrogen peroxide? And if the guy that makes this stuff isn't willing to tell us, who is?
Right.
And then immediately runs off, man, tries to figure out how to do this, starts ordering corals so we can answer that question because the community respects it. And so this is the piece, though, is like the reason I'm calling you guys up is because not all the manufacturers are willing to even have this conversation or care.
And not all of them can, because they're also not in it, right? They're not in it. A lot of these guys aren't even in it anymore.
All right, so it's not like you say, picking like favorites or something. It's like, no, you just go to the well that's producing.
Right.
It's so much effort to squeeze it out of somebody who doesn't really want to have this conversation.
Right.
But somebody who does, man, you naturally go. And so there's more.
Other products. What else did we come together on?
Tasks.
Yes,
this is you and me against the rest.
Yes.
So when you go to an Apex EB8, when you go to the first outlet, are you configuring an outlet or did we lose somebody? Nope. Back. Are you configuring an outlet or are you configuring a protein skimmer?
Yeah, exactly.
In my mind, you're configuring a protein skimmer.
Right. It's a more it's this abstraction, right? That all along, things, quite frankly, were engineer kind of designed, right? Around, rightly so, right? Moving to the way people think, and with you and I talking, how do people think about things is absolutely what's necessary. And the engineers want to go, yeah, but we won't want to like pigeonhole people into anything. We want to give them every option known to man to be able to do something. And I'm like, no, just assume this is what they want to do, because this is what 80, 90% of them want to do.
And the answers both are correct. It's
Right.
kind of usability versus capability, right? And so for me and Terrence are like, dude, there is an 80-20 to this. I don't think we were using that term at the time, but most people who plug a protein skimmer in this thing, or a chiller, or a heater, would be great with these options.
Right.
Let's just feed them through it. And so you go find the thing and like go through the tasks, and like it's no more programming. It's just like answer 5 questions and it's done.
Yeah.
Okay, in my mind, that's what the outlet should be. And we shouldn't hide tasks up in the nav somewhere. But
we still have other stuff to do and places to go.
Well, though, man, like you don't know. My business partner Andrew always says, like, you fire the bullet, hit the target, get a bigger gun, fire the bullet, just keep kind of progressing. And so you just got to test the waters and stuff and find out what people like to use and how to do it, because you and me are wrong as much as we are right.
Oh, for sure.
But like, the task probably wouldn't exist if you and I weren't pushing the conversation.
For sure, especially from your end. I mean, you guys definitely pushed us to do a lot of things. I mean, look, you're the biggest buyer of product from us. We have to listen, which is fine, because
it's not true, because most don't.
Okay.
So I mean, to be honest, right? Like, most people aren't calling me asking me, and the couple times I call, like, they don't really care.
Okay.
So I don't know. It's actually valuable to say no, because, like, it's better, man. We're better together when the people that have the closest touch, to the reefer, and are working with the people that are actually manufacturing stuff. And I wish, man, this is actually an invitation to all of our suppliers, man. Like, I would love to do the same thing. Call me on Sunday, because I'm willing to talk.
Uh-oh.
Another one, actually, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
I
Steve
can spend
Berlin.
3 hours with him, too.
Yeah, Steve Berlin.
Yes.
He gets it.
I don't know if he knows that we all call him CJ Steve at the stop, but Steve Berlin, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so this is another interesting one. Like, and he pitched this at me, and I just kind of blew it off for a really long time.
Okay.
The AWC.
Yes.
The auto water changes.
Yes. For the longest time, we, probably I'd say since the beginning, I had this concept for the dose that wasn't just dosing things. I mean, the original marketing information had this in it from day one. It was, this is an awesome product to do automatic water change. Everybody hates changing water. What if it was like dialysis and just happened all the time, a little bit at a time all throughout the week? Most people have a 100-gallon tank. They want to change out 10 gallons. You're going to have a gallon a day. It's just super simple to do. And I pitched it to Ryan. I told Ryan it was in there multiple times when we're talking about the dose, and he's just like, yeah, whatever. And then one day,
get it.
And then one day, it was like,
because I did it.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, man.
But then one day he's like, oh my God, I found this thing about water changes. Water changes with the dose is the greatest thing ever. I'm like,
okay, well, straight up, we're all a product of our experiences, right? And at the time, I was spending a lot of energy into not doing water changes, right? And, I was listening to the Triton method and the logic behind it, and using ICP to tell if your water even needs to be changed.
Right.
And, there's some legitimacy in there. But also, I got to tell you, after that, I have just found that tanks that do water changes just do consistently better. That doesn't mean that there aren't some out there that, like, don't do water changes and do great, blah, blah, blah.
But if you do this.
If I took 100 people and 50 of them did water changes and 50 didn't, I know which group of people is going to have more success.
Right, and what's the biggest barrier to doing a water change? I mean...
Well, dude, it's not only just hauling that water around. I'm ruining my floors and stuff.
And I'm sucking on tubes to get siphons going. And
Yeah. Yeah.
So now everybody over there now is all like, you've got lines going everywhere at BRS, don't you, for automatic water change now?
So I did that PCR test actually. My tank tells me like all the bacteria and whatever, and one of them they have some flesh-eating bacteria in the tank. Whatever. And then I did like a siphon with my mouth. I got a mouthful of it. I'm like, I'm gonna die. I'm like, sure enough, this thing is gonna eat my tongue.
You definitely get the EBGBs and stuff like that, and I know you over time. You're not one to like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no. So now auto water changes comes in, and you're like, whoa, this is so much easier. And then like we put for the business, and I'm like, why? I got 50 tanks there. Like, why are we doing water change? Like, some poor guy here is changing out, 50 water changes. What if we just put a bunch of pumps out?
Yeah.
And we had one big bin of water. Holy cow.
I remember seeing it over there, and you had all these lines all coming in for the doses, and all these doses lined up, and yeah.
My ears just were not open to this conversation, but you kept, at it.
Like, I kept driving it.
And I'm like, well, sometimes, man, you're just wrong, and that was one of them for me. Yeah. I'll tell you another one you have pitched at me a lot is the Wave.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, I love the Vortex. I love them. They go on
Me
the
too.
side. I love them on the back. I love the.
I love them on the back. I don't like them on the side, truth be told. But
Yeah. So
yes.
truth be told, right now I had a whole series of different power heads on the tank, and now I finally settled actually on the little teeny sea chays everywhere.
Yes, and I almost choked when you told me just the other day. I'm like, for the longest time, I've been trying to get you to try the waves in all sorts of tanks that are around the office and whatnot. And every time he would say, "It's got a wire in the tank. I don't like a wire in the tank." And I'd like, dude, the other one has a ginormous wire on the outside of the tank that occludes everything and whatnot. I'm like, give it a shot. And he's like, no, I don't like the wire in the tank. Now all of a sudden, it must be Steve. Must be Steve. Must have been better at this than me.
I don't know. I just ultimately what it was is with the sea chays is because they had this super soft, really wide angle thing. It's perfect for LPS, right?
Yeah.
And once I was trying to do an SPS tank, lifestyle change, time changes, and I'm like, you know what, this is gonna be a better fit for me. Also, there were some things that I just started put some LPS in there, and they started to excite my soul, and I'm like, I'm gonna run with this.
Yeah.
And everybody knew, except for me, actually. Yeah, so it's interesting though because not all the conversations land exactly where either one of us
for
wants
sure.
them to go.
Yeah, no doubt.
This one, I mean, we might as well talk about it now, right? The sky.
Okay.
Where did this come from?
Oh yeah. So again, understanding who's, in my opinion, and I believe it's absolutely true, is the biggest driver of examining reef keeping gear, and especially in lighting over time, was Bulk Reef Supply and Ryan, and continually, as you say, sharpening, what you're doing with the testing and the way you went about testing, and especially when you moved to the testing where it wasn't just, okay, what's the par, and it wasn't just, okay, what's the par in these different, because you got it went through a bunch of stages and a grid, and then you went to where you said, what's the spectrum in different spots in the tank, and watched, and the first time, I remember seeing that the first time, and seeing that thing waving around all over the place, and going, and I remember your words too, you're like, I don't know if this is good or bad or not, it just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look like this is what you would want for the corals. I don't know if it's bad or not. I would think you'd want everything to be consistent.
Okay. The two things that really crossed my mind were, I don't know if it's good or bad, but if you gave me the option between one that does this
Right.
and one that mimics the older technology that we've used successfully,
Right.
or the sun,
Right.
I'll pick one of those.
Right.
So if all things remain the same, then I would prefer a well-blended spectrum that's evenly distributed.
Exactly. And so we watched, as many people know, I ran the Coral Care version 1s, and we watched those things come to market early on. I watched your review on those and the things that you had liked about the early one, that you guys weren't even selling them. They were a 220, and it blew my mind that you even did the reviews on that product, right? And I was like, whoa. And we had talks about having lighting for a long time here at Neptune Systems, and we want to have something that's different. We just don't want another Me Too kind of thing if it was going to be a big flagship product like that. And so we just watched everything that you did, and said that this is what I think would be the best. This would be probably the ultimate way of doing things, and then tried to find the compromise, because you can't have a light over the entire tank and all of those things. And that's really how we put together the game plan for the sky.
It was something you said to me, I don't know, it was a few months ago, and you have the shadowing conversation, and it seems kind of obtuse, and then you're like, yeah, if half the coral's shadowed, it gets half the photosynthetic energy. Yeah, probably about half.
Yep.
That's a really good way to say it, and then when we start doing our shadow testing, you're like, whoa, man, these things, everything, when you have a small pinpoint of light,
right.
But also, one of the things that's really hit home for me is I try to have the conversation with a lot of people, in our industry, and hey, dude, if you just let me tell the world what this thing does uniquely well, man, we'll help people be successful with it. But the reality is everybody wants to be everything to everyone.
Right.
Everything to everyone. I'm not willing to be pigeonholed into this segment, even if it's half of the market.
Right.
And do I need a T5 end-to-end if I want to have a bunch of zoanthids and stuff in the tank? No. But if I want to have a bunch of acros that shade itself and its neighbors.
Yeah, and get big, and you don't want just to have a fruit stand, you want to have colonies.
Yep. And there's alternatives. I can have a grid of much smaller lights,
Sure.
and they will
There's
all
other ways to get to
intersect enough, but it's probably closer together than you think.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of cords, you know. And I don't know. So the reason, like, actually, this was interesting because in last week or the week before, Randy and I went through some of BRS TV's history, right? And I realized that the first investigates we ever did was the Coral Care, right?
Yeah.
And that's because when I saw it, man, this thing excited my soul, man. And like, I mean, we've been talking about lighting forever. And like, after we tested it, like, people just don't get it, right? And I think that's, like, again, the evidence of, like, you know, are we creating this light to light up the tank, or are we creating it to care for an animal that requires photosynthetic energy in very specific wavelengths, right?
Right.
And then when you, like, the only way you can really get there is when you're a reefer.
Yeah.
You think like a reefer that has to care for an animal.
And you run stuff a long time, and you play with different things, and you use different things, and you know, establishing that kind of methodology that the Coral Care had was correct was me over 2 years time growing giant acro colonies and going, this is the methodology of spreading light out that needs to happen in order to really get that kind of an effect. If you're going for a softy tank or you're going for LPS tank, you can do other things. But really, if you want that really, like, I call it the baller SPS tank, you want to get coverage of light everywhere. Get the corals lit.
So one day I get a phone call from Terrence, and he says, I want to know what par meter you use. I want to know what spectrometer you use. I want to know the exact tank that you're using. And he decides,
I forgot about that, actually.
Yeah, I'm going to beat the test run. I'm like, go for it, dude. Run, man. I can't wait to see.
I remember that now.
Because the test is all, like, it's not BRS's test. It's a test of well-blended spectrum. It's a test of well-distributed light that's even. It's a test of hotspots, of mounting height. It's a test of how do I use this to achieve the desired effect.
Right.
So go beat it, man. Bravo. Right? And again, like, a nice interaction of two entities trying to achieve a common goal, which is how do we get back to halides and T5s, to be honest, the success that those things had with all the features and usability of LEDs without all the bulb changes and mercury and hazardous waste bulbs I have to figure out how to
try
get
to get
rid
it
of.
as easy as using T5s, right? That was the other thing too, is to
plug it in,
set it up real quick, and it's done and ready to go, no doubt. The other story that was a fun and interesting one around the sky, and then we could probably move on because we want to make this all about the sky as much as Terrence would like to, is I came a year and a half or so ago. I came out to Minneapolis to visit with you on a couple of different things, right? And I on the airplane over, I wrote down, I don't know, 20, 30 different names for this new light product that I had. And instead of having the phone conversation, we sat in your office and I handed you a slip of paper, and I'd injected a bunch of really bad ones in there on purpose too, just to seed it up there, and handed it over, and he said, any of those any good? And you're like, nah, no, not really. But tell the rest.
Okay, so then I'm a real literal person. I like the names of products to tell me what it's going to do. I'm like, I don't know, dude. I think way better would be like Skylight, right? Let's just call it the Skylight, right?
But then you basically went to the video that you had done before, which I had completely forgotten about until you showed it to me again, which talked about the difference between the sun. What would the sun be like? Because you guys illustrated this in the video. You guys can go back and watch this. If it was only the sun and there was no atmosphere, and you related to me, we don't have to get into the deep things about snorkeling, in the morning and how the light goes everywhere. And I've used that same analogy in talking to people. I got it from you. And that atmosphere, right? And that's why when you look at the sky and the logo, that's why we designed the logo that way and everything, that is the real secret there. And you're like, it's the skylight. It's like the light that comes from the sky.
I know. Like, is this like? I wish I could show this video right now, because until you see it, you just don't get it.
Yeah.
Right. But you think of the sun as the source of the light, and I guess in the end it is.
Part of it is, yes.
But what's really happening is the sun is hitting the atmosphere and it's diffusing it. And the best analogy here is, like, imagine right now if there was no atmosphere.
Right.
It'd be black and there would be this little ball of light, and every time it was shadowed by
Yeah,
anything,
imagine
it'd be
you're
totally
in a room.
dark.
Imagine you're in a room with a 100-watt, little bulb, and that was the only light shining on you, and somebody was filming you. What would that look like compared to one of these soft boxes?
Yeah, and so also like it's the shadow effect, and so we started testing in some shadow things like on the lights, like let's emulate the sun only, and man, there's super duper hard shadows. Like
No surprise.
Yeah, you can very much see that this thing is shadowed when there's a little teeny
Worse
light.
yet, when you have multiple points of colored light and you do shadow, you get really weird things happening.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Like weird separation. So, but if you get a big light, this big, when I do this, you can't even see the shadow at all.
Right.
Right, and you'll see it more in the investigates as we go on. But like you can't see this at all. It's the same thing like, if you go out today and watch a cloud go in front of the sky, it's still pretty damn bright.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like, it's the same thing.
So that's where skylight came from.
Skylight. Except for you shortened
And
it up.
I wasn't like, well, so that's the thing. So I left there going, skylight, I don't know. And then I noodled on it all night. It's just the way it is. I woke up in the morning and I thought more about it. And then by the time I got to the airport, I was like, wait a second. Neptune Systems, part of our DNA are these 3-letter names. Okay, it's what we are. It started with Kurt, and I've carried it through as best I could. The Trident obviously is not that. And I'm like, why do we need to call it the skylight? Isn't it just the sky?
Boom.
And I called Ryan. Do you remember? I called you from the airport. I'm like, dude, you were the inspiration. It wasn't exactly what you said. This is what it is. It's the sky. And I came back. I told Kurt, and it was like, done.
Oh yeah. Again, I love literal names. What it does, this thing emulates the sky. And in fact, like when you actually think about it too, like you look at, you were talking to Dana yesterday, or Dana, and we all went back, and you go back in the day, and you're like, everybody's like, yeah, we're shooting for 2,000 par and all this stuff, because I measured it on the reef, and it was 2,000. You go look at Dana's work, and you're like, oh wait, the fastest photosynthesis happens at like 9 to 10 a.m. when it's like 200 par or whatever, and at like 3 in the afternoon. It's actually protecting itself from the sun, and when the sun isn't visible and the sky's illuminated is when it has the fastest rates of photosynthesis.
Yeah.
So let's call it like what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know you're not trying to pay attention to any of the comments, but definitely people want to see the data. So is that coming on the sky soon?
Oh yeah. Okay. So quite frankly, man, like we knew this was coming, and I didn't want to produce a video that's all shilly, and then all of a sudden now it's just news. So what you'll see is probably
Greg Carroll right there. See?
There we go. Greg, you will definitely see it. So all the data's collected. Rainey and I haven't shot the video. We'll probably shoot it next week.
Okay.
Get it edited and get it. It'll probably start with something along the